It's time to go in the kitchen with Chef Bradley Dickinson. Taste what's trending, meet local chefs and purveyors, learn about wine with Michael, and get seasonally inspired. Here's Chef Bradley Dickinson.
Thank you, Marina. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Michael Rogers. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Bradley?
I'm doing good. A little tired. Kind of a long week, but feeling good.
Yeah, it's been a busy week, hasn't it?
Busy week. We like to have busy week in our restaurants, Pearl and Coral in Bellevue, and we like to welcome all of our listeners to come in and give us a shot. Give us a try over there. Right, Pearl is right in Lincoln Square, and Coral is really in the Hyatt Regency in Bellevue, so right in the downtown Bellevue core.
Yep.
Easy to get in and easy to get out, and come in and give us a shot.
Well, you've been working on some menu items, haven't you?
Well, yeah, as we were talking last week, I mean, the change of the season, I mean, boy, it came
quick.
Hard and fast.
I know,
right?
when you wanted to change all the menus on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Michael, this stuff's gone. We got to change out.
That's right. That's right. Well, that was a big day, though. We had a lot of stuff going on that day.
A lot of stuff, but I want to talk about that for a minute because some of the menu things, and we had Jake in last week from Storino Farms, and he was talking about 7 million pounds of pumpkins. Well, I can tell you, we got some of those pumpkins in this week. We got these sugar pie pumpkins, and those are not just for baking pies.
By the way, yeah.
I mean, we do a bunch of different things. We did. Here's what I got on the menu this week at Pearl. We did a risotto. Sugar pie pumpkin risotto. So we make a great arborio rice and we cook that off, but we add a little pumpkin puree. We add some chunks of pumpkin. We add a little herb butter. You could put a little grated Parmesan over the top.
It just screams fall.
Sage butter, I think, is what the chef did. But it's just and it's so tasty, and it's got a nice savory, a little bit of sweetness on the back end. That's nice. We also put a pumpkin bisque on, which is perfect this time of year. We do a little creme fraiche with maple in it. Little maple syrup mixed in, so that's kind of nice. Kind of just warm, right?
Yeah.
Warm, comfortable food, and in fact, I think the pumpkin showed up on one more dish on the salmon. We've got a little pumpkin and lacinato kale underneath the salmon, so that's kind of fun.
JJ was doing a little sautéed kale the other day. It was really, really tasty.
Well, we talked about that lacinato kale, right? Also, some people call it dinosaur kale. But, it's right now it's in the garden. We've got some in our garden that's about 1.5 feet tall, ready to just be plucked off and eaten. And we did those kale chips, remember, earlier in the summer. Right,
with Stuart Holmes from Charlie's Produce.
But right now, sautéed kale with some caramelized onions, a little garlic butter sauce. Ooh.
Yeah. That's
on the menu. So that's kind of a lot of changes going on. And the oysters are back. We had Roll in last week from Penn Cove. We've got Hama Hamas coming into both of our restaurants this week, the Blue Pools.
Yep. You had Kushi earlier this week.
Kushi. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really that kind of, things are changing and a lot of fun. So we can do that. But today we've got kind of a special edition of In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley. We've got a little wine edition, we're going to call it today. And we've got a bunch of things to talk about. Earlier this week, we did a little wine dinner at Pearl, which was a lot of fun. I want to talk about that. We welcomed Cake Bread Cellars, and Dennis Cake Bread was in town and kind enough to come by the restaurant. So that was pretty good. That was a pretty fun night.
It was a great night. Yeah.
And I want to talk about some of the times we talk about pairing in the wines and how that works and how do you pair things and so on. And we always say, well, what do you like?
Well, what's funny about this one is a little bit special because, Dennis wasn't in town when we first tasted the wines, right?
Right.
So we're kind of, okay, here's the wines. What's he trying to, create, or what's the essence behind that particular varietal? And then you put it together with what we got going on in the restaurant.
Yeah, but I think for us, when we do those tastings and we want to pair that with, we really want to focus on the winery and focus on the wines, but we also want to have the food that delivers and matches up well. So it's not just again what I like to eat. So I want to talk about that a little bit because I think it's important to recognize how the winemakers and the chefs kind of get together and make that all work, right? I mean, for me, what I do, and you've seen it, the guy comes in and we taste the wines, but it's more than just picking up. We're trying a Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, what are we getting? We're getting a little pineapple. We're getting some tropical fruit. We're getting good acid.
Right, minerality.
How do you see this working at a wine dinner? Mm-hmm. And so, for me, I could say, well, I could do this nice little shellfish salad or something, but I want to pick up what everybody else says so that you can kind of understand it. And luckily, for us today, we've got a special guest in the studio with us. I'd like to welcome Christopher Chan. Christopher, welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Chef Brad, Michael, hello.
Yep.
Great to be
welcome.
here.
Yep.
So we're going to pick your brain later in the show, but that was just a little teaser. because Christopher's got a ton of experience in the wine, just the industry. In fact, you're going to Walla Walla this weekend to pick grapes?
Got to check on the harvest.
Yeah, so it's not just drinking and tasting, and you go soup to nuts, right? The whole deal. That's kind of nice.
Kicking the dirt.
So,
Kicking the dirt. There you go.
In fact, Christopher, let me ask you. I mean, if you're doing pairings with a chef, how does that work for you? What do you think is the best way to come up with a wine pairing for a dinner or something like that? Or even if you're just having a dinner at home with friends?
Well, it's a great question because that's a lot of people want to figure out, how do I pair a wine with my food? Well, there's two ways to attack that. One is to compare flavors that are similar in style or contrast. So you've got a flavor of a dish that is different than the flavor of the wine, but the two actually mix because it's like, we'll say a vinaigrette. Oil and vinegar are two different things, but they work together in harmony.
Right. And you got to be careful, by the way, speaking of that in the wines, you got to be careful on the vinegars, right?
Vinegar side, right.
Because if you're doing a salad, you don't want too much of that vinegar because that doesn't always work. Most times does not work with the wine.
As long as you have a wine with lots of high acid, then you're probably okay.
Yeah. In fact, earlier this week for that wine dinner, we did a roasted beet salad, which was really nice. No vinegar at all. We just did a basil oil with salt and pepper, and that's all. That's the only thing we dressed it with, and it worked out great. So,
yeah, you got the sweetness and the salt, which works, right? Salt and
and a little subtle savory in the beets with a little bit of the back end sweet. So that worked pretty well. So
we did that with the Chardonnay, right?
I wasn't in the room. I was in the kitchen, so I don't remember what. Yes, but
you wrote the menu.
Yes, we did do that. We did do that with the cake bread Chardonnay, and it was great.
Because the interesting part about that with cake bread in particular is that when you think of California or Chardonnay, you have a tendency to think of these big butter bombs, and that is not his wine at all. It's got a real nice acid, real nice crispness to it, which really worked well with the beets.
Now, what was the wine, Michael, that he started with? We usually start with at the wine dinners we do at the restaurant. We usually start with little bubbles. Right,
and he actually threw us a little curveball and brought up some rosé, and
which I did not know. I didn't know that cake bread made a rosé.
Well, yeah, it was interesting hearing the story because they make the rosé because they've got the juice, but they couldn't sell it. And
what?
Yeah, he tried to sell it, and so he just used it at the winery only, and it's called Vin du Porch. And so it's his little, ode to the back porch, and it's a little rosé wine, and it was actually really, really nice. It was a nice, crisp balance to it, and it was really refreshing.
Yeah, great way to start the night.
Yeah. A little pink, So.
Yeah,
or the morning,
morning.
Well,
afternoon.
Christopher, what some people have said is that you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. But that's for another show, another time. This is In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley on 570 KVI, and we've got Christopher Chan and Michael, and we're talking wines, and we're focused on this cake bread because they were in town, and
right.
I mean, cake bread has a name. Certainly recognizable, right?
Oh, they celebrated their 40th anniversary this year, so they started producing wine in '73. So,
and is that Napa? Is that all Napa?
For the most part? Yep.
But I don't think that's I know that name, and I recognize that name, and I think you can probably find it in some specialty shops and a lot of restaurants in town. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that that's necessarily a huge. It's not a huge Napa winery, is it? I mean, it's not a. I mean, there's some little boutiques, and then there's the Mondavis of the world, right?
Right.
That's somewhere in between, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think what most people think about with cake bread is their Chardonnay. I mean, that kind of comes to mind first and foremost. But, the other night Merlot, Cab, Pinot Noir, we went through the whole gambit with them. So, yeah, it was good.
And that Pinot they brought up, that was another winery only, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So if you want that wine, you've got to go to Napa.
Or be part of the wine club. Which is a nice way to really experience or get to taste a lot of wines that people don't have the opportunity to.
Cakebreadsellers.com.
There you go.
There you go. There's their plug.
Plug for Dennis.
There's their plug. Anyway, it was a lot of fun, and when we do those dinners, we don't pack the whole restaurant. I think we had 28 guests.
Yep.
And
it's a perfect number.
It's a perfect number, and I get to go in and meet some of the people, and the nice thing is that the winemaker's there, and he chats about the wine, and Dennis doesn't necessarily take over. He didn't take over the room, right? I mean, he wanted to enjoy the experience.
He had his moments. Yeah. But he likes to talk.
Yeah. But it's still kind of a fun deal to just kind of get a little taste in. More on that.
Yeah, and meet the winemaker.
Yeah. We'll be right back. A little bit more of our special wine edition, In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley on 570 KVI. We'll be right back.
Chef Bradley Dickinson and Michael Rogers invite you to Pearl in Bellevue.
What's on my list today? Fresh local, seasonal. A lot of guys talk about it. Not everybody does it. In fact, we've got king salmon still coming off the Washington coast for the next couple of weeks, so get that while you can. It's still beautiful fish. We season it lightly. We're serving that with a little sweet corn risotto, last of the sweet corn from Oregon, and that'll be gone. But it's just wonderful. Get it while you can.
PearlBellevue.com in Bellevue's Lincoln Square, across the driveway from the Westin Hotel. Pearl in Bellevue.
We're back. I can always tell, to the strains of Joe Walsh. We're going to talk fine wine. I think Joe Walsh I think he's a winemaker. I think he might have his own label. Christopher, does that ring a bell? I know some of these guys do it. Some of the golfers
he's probably
do it.
an investor somewhere.
Well,
Exactly.
Doobie Brothers have got one. I
Yeah.
think the Rolling Stones have got a label, and
my gosh.
Sting might have a label.
Mick Jagger Merlot.
Lips.
Wow.
How's that palate, right?
Keith Richards Pinot Noir. I'm sure it has a nice subtle nuance of
There's a smoky note to it.
of tobacco.
Smoky note.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome back. You're in the kitchen with Chef Bradley on 570 KVI, and alongside Michael Rogers, we've got Christopher Chan in the house today, and we kind of jumped in the last segment, Christopher, but we want to know a little bit about your history, and I mean, you are really you're one of the wine guys in town, and tell us how that started, and kind of a little bit more about you.
The history of Christopher Chan. I'm on wine. That's cool. Started back in 1985 when I was raiding Mom and Dad's liquor cabinet, probably.
Weren't we all?
Mom and Dad are physicians, and Dad had a great interest in wine and was collecting wine early on. So he's back in the 60s.
Okay.
And Mom was loved French Burgundy, red Burgundy, Pinot Noir, that is, and my first visit to France, and I took French in high school, was 1985. We landed in Burgundy, Paris, and did the whole tour. And I fell in love with French food, French girls, and French wine at that time. And
Wait a minute, 1985. You're not. How old were you in 1985?
I was 18.
18 when you got your first taste of Burgundy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And from there, I realized that once you taste the best, you can figure out the rest. And that's kind of how it starts. You go high, then you trickle down to the bottom, and versus working your way up, which I think is a little harder, a little more difficult task. I was in the restaurant business early on, started in 1983 with Bruce Naffelty at the Alexis Hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Worked over at places like Triples and had a lot of fun. It's Casa You Betcha, if you remember those days.
sure.
Worked there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Worked at the Columbia Tower Club and found my way to the Rainier Club in 1997, where I was the director of wine and spirits for 15 years and just concluded that great run of great tenure there.
So you've been downtown Seattle and in the restaurant business, and I mean the club's a little bit different, but that was kind of the basis. I mean, but when did you know that the wine was going to be your passion? How did that develop? I mean, was that trip to Burgundy?
It sounds like 1985.
That was the start of it. But subsequently we went to. I have relatives in Australia, so I went to the Hunter Valley. We went to Tuscany in Italy, and I've been to Bordeaux. And so it really evolved just on tours and trips and tastings with Mom and Dad and the family meal. And I realized that you can like something, but the challenge is, can you talk about it? I mean, I love pizza, and I can talk about pizza all day. And I realized that, wine's really no different than pizza. It's just talk about the flavors and the complexity and what you like, and
Right.
you can go from there.
Why one guy's crust is better than another, and why this sauce might work with that, and why this one gets cheese and that one doesn't.
Absolutely. It's just like that, layers.
Yeah.
I like that. And you've had a little in Tuscany. I'm sure you had some pizza, and you've had Seattle pizza.
That
so-
was, when I was there, I said, wherever I see either Napoleon in France, I'm going to stop and have some pastry. If I see a slice of pizza in Italy, I'm going to stop. That was my mantra. How I get through the world.
So I mean, that
Pretty
kind
good
of,
agenda, right?
Yeah, kind of a little world traveler, to get started in the whole wine thing, and then, but for you, I mean, you've taken it to another level.
yes,
right?
yeah.
And tell us about that. Tell us how you study. Tell us how somebody that is really interested in wine. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that just like drink wine.
Of course.
I understand that, but other people want to learn more and they want to experience it. And I mean, some of the travels, but also there's school and there's associations and there's some of that stuff. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. It started in 2004, 2005 when I realized, I thought I knew a lot about wine, but then I met some really fantastic people like Eric Liedholm over at Sea Star, who's now there, and then Shane Bjornholm, who was the director at Canlist. And when I talked to them, they had sort of exposed me to a different level of wine education and wine experience, and realized that I needed to learn more about the history and the vineyards and the winemaking styles and to be able to talk about wine in a different, well, not just it's a nice wine. Let's talk about structure. Let's talk about acid and texture and oak and things like that. And also to understand what classic wine regions are and how that translates and why that is significant and how you could build a world-class wine list. So when I met those guys, like, holy smokes, these cats were studying for their advanced sommelier degree through the Court of Master Sommeliers, and subsequently Shane earned his master's sommelier degree in 2005, I believe. And Eric is hosting a great program over on the East Side. So that's where I learned, realized that I needed a little more studying, and there was some. It's kind of self-study, really, but you start reading books and surround yourself with some people who have a lot of knowledge and who love talking about it. That's how you learn. It's about discoursive ideas and sharing, what you know, and picking each other's brains and really having an examination process. And so the two bodies are the International Sommelier Guild, ISG for short, and I took some courses with them, which is cool because they have a curriculum, and that really allows you to show up, do some homework, get some lecture, etc. Structure.
Can you do
really
that
good.
online, or do you have to? Do you go to classroom?
Well, since the 2000s, now there are a number of websites and societies, the French Wine Society for one, or you can do online study and webinars and things like that. So there's lots of new opportunities to accredit yourself and elevate your education.
Wow. So that's a different level.
Absolutely. There's a lot of guys around town. I'm sure you're one of them, but tasting groups.
Yes.
Yeah. How many groups are you in?
I am in 3 fantastic tasting groups, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So,
and the purpose of that is really just to kind of keep the conversation alive, right?
Right. Well, it's about exposure. You need to expose yourself, but also to understand what classic varieties are. So if you look, I want to be a master sommelier someday, and that's a dedicated path. And I'm now currently an advanced sommelier through the Court of Master Sommeliers, which I believe is probably the more recognized worldwide association of accreditation for sommeliers for our industry. But blind tasting and tasting groups allow you to taste a lot of wines, and also share the cost. I mean, the good wines cost some money. They are not
inexpensive.
They are not inexpensive. So it's great to have a group of people to sort of share the load, and also to be able to talk about it. Because the best wine in the world, when you're having it alone, is the second best in the wine in the world because you can't share with anybody.
Right, so you want to share that like a great meal.
Well, it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Brad. It's different people are going to have different layers and different things they pick up at different times. And so in a tasting group, I would imagine, I know a lot of times when I'm tasting a wine, someone will say, "Oh, do you get you get that hint of chocolate or something like that?" Oh yeah, I get that. And I might not have been my initial first thought or what have you. So
lots of palates out there.
Yeah. Well, we're chatting with Christopher Chan about wine and why not in the kitchen with Chef Bradley. But I mean, some of the things you mentioned, I really liked. I mean, you just learning from these great people that have done all the other studies, right? So it's not just you tasting the wine; you're learning, you're listening. I mean, it's kind of the way. I didn't go to culinary arts school, but I had an opportunity to work with some great chefs along the way, and I really. A lot of times I kind of joke about it. I kept my mouth shut and kept my eyes and my ears open, right? And you learn a lot. But I still want to learn. I mean, and for the wine thing, I mean, it's ongoing, right?
Ongoing, vintage after vintage, producer, region, et cetera. It's wonderful. It's a big world of wine out there, and I'm ready to take on the task.
Well, and there's so many different layers to it. I mean, from the soil to the climate to the region, the history, the winemaker, all of the things that come together to make these great wines.
We talk here a lot. We tout Washington wines, and with good reason.
Fantastic.
I mean, we have a lot of our friends are in the wine business, and on the east side, in Woodinville, Yakima, all the way to eastern Washington into Oregon, but northwest, and we focus on that in the restaurants at Pearl and at Coral on the wine list. But I want to know, from your experiences, and you've traveled the world to the wine regions, to the great.
Done my best.
And I know this is kind of subjective, but Washington wines have really made a move in the last, 25, 30 years?
Well, certainly we've basically become relevant in the last 20 years.
Okay.
But I think in the last 5 years, Washington has reached the level of being recognized as a world-class wine region.
Kind of getting some respect,
yes.
Right? Is that what you mean by that? And
absolutely, but being consistent. I mean, it's great to have a wine that's recognized one year, but if you can't do that year after year, then you're not really relevant. But Washington has become, the second best place in the United States for wine. I mean, you got to go to California. You cannot discount.
Right, you can't discount the Northern the Napa area and Sonoma and all that, right?
Yeah.
But the Washington and the rest of the Northwest is really stepping up, and it's nice to hear that we're getting that respect, and the winemakers here and the job that they've done. It's amazing.
It's the most exciting time for Washington State, especially with the Washington Wine Commission and their promotion throughout the country and worldwide, and what they do, as well as just getting a chance to see how winemakers collaborate. I mean, we have a great community of winemakers and also viticultural schools. We got South Seattle Community College, we've got Central Washington, and of course Walla Walla Community College has a world-class program. So we've got smart people here.
So there's a lot of opportunities to learn and to learn about the wine, learn about the viniculture, learn about the growing, and then, of course, the ways to learn about the wine through the different sommelier associations, right?
Yeah, I think, in fact, Seattle has the most advanced sommeliers in the country. We've got 26 green pins who are all studying for masters.
Green pins. Tell us, what does that mean?
So the Court of Master Sommeliers has 4 levels of accreditation. They've got we call the intro. This is a cute little red pin, which I love. Then you have a certified sommelier. That's when you actually go through an examination process and do some blind tasting, do some question we'll call theory. Answer some theory.
Okay.
And then you do some service. And so we say, hey, yes, you're ready to step on the floor as a certified sommelier. You can represent this organization. But the next level is called the advanced, and that's really the precursor. I say it's like the master's, and then you get the PhD.
Okay.
So those are both 2 challenging levels to achieve. But the advanced is you have to pass 3 separate parts of this examination. You have to pass theory, which is a written test, some multiple choice, some fill in the blank, etc.
Some essay.
Some essay, yes.
Some essay. This is like studying for the SAT or the ACT, Michael, which your kids will know about in a couple of years.
Yeah, I got a little time there, but anyway.
Well, anyway, we've got to take a break here, but I want to come back and talk some more with Christopher Chan and Michael, our special wine edition of In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley on 570 KVI. We've got a lot to carry. Lot to cover. I want to come back and talk about some of that Rainier Club history and what you've got going on at the Seattle Wine Awards. That's kind of exciting. So we'll be right back in the kitchen with Chef Bradley.
Chef Bradley Dickinson and Michael Rogers invite you to Coral Bar and Kitchen.
This is a great time of the year. We're transitioning from summer into fall. So is the wine list. We've got a lot of great wineries that are just now releasing their wines. It's harvest time right now. We had a great year. The 2012 vintage is going to be fabulous. But right now, we're starting to see the 2011s. We're starting to see the 2010s starting to be released. Again, really great quality wine coming out of Washington State right now.
KORAL Bellevue.com. At the Hyatt Regency in Bellevue Place, Coral Bar and Kitchen.
Good morning. Welcome back in the kitchen with Chef Bradley, 570 KVI. Bradley's Rock and Roll Kitchen, affectionately known as. By the way, another good football weekend in town, in score. Well, in score, what am I saying? We've got a couple of good football teams, 4-0.
Right.
Neither in town this week, but should be another good football weekend.
That's right.
In fact, somebody asked me for a recipe. I got it, and I don't know how this pairs into the wine, but I did chili at the game last week, and guys asked me about that, and they want me to do a redo. So I might share that recipe later. But I want to talk. That's a tough. I don't know if the wine pairing for chili. We're going to come back to that, Christopher. we're gonna put you on the spot.
Well, on that note, being a sommelier is not just about wine. It's the whole spirits aspect and the service, and it's a big portion of it is the wine aspect, of course, but there's all the spirits and all the different things that go with it. So maybe we can kind of go into that world with the chili, right?
Okay. Sure. That's a good call. But I want to finish up. Come back to, you were talking about the pins, the green pin, the red pin, the advanced.
The purple pin, and then the gold pin.
Well, these are the pins that when you walk into your restaurant and the guy presents the wine list, it's on his lapel, right?
Yeah, you've got a pin, and we're very proud of those pins because it's a lot of hard work, self-study, etc. So as I was talking about the theory part of the advanced exam, there's also the service part, which is probably the most important, because if you want to be a sommelier, you're working on the floor. You need to be able to answer questions and open champagne gracefully or sparkling wine, talk about spirits, recommend cocktails. I mean, this is a business, and as you guys know, when you got to sell some things.
Well, exactly.
Right,
I mean, we're in the restaurant business.
That's right.
We have a couple of restaurants in Bellevue, Pearl and Coral, and we like to sell wine. We like to sell champagne, spirits, beer. And it's all got to fit, and our team needs to understand that. Michael brings winemakers in, and they do tastings, and I mean, it's interesting to see that the day after the tasting, boy, what wine is selling? right?
Yeah. Well, we like to say there's a story in every glass, right? And so what's your story? How do you make that connection with that particular wine that you're going to sell? And more importantly, how are you going to allow the guest to feel comfortable and confident in that decision? And it really meets what they're looking for. That's where the sommelier comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A story and an experience to sort of put them in that place, talk about the history, the vines, the winemaker, just give them something to, close your eyes and put yourself there. And that's just the wonderful experience, part of the restaurant experience.
So you were talking about the master. Is that the highest level?
Master sommelier, that is.
And in Seattle or our region, I mean, there's only a handful of people that have that
I think
status.
there's 205 master sommeliers in the world. So in Washington currently
in the
has
world
7 of them.
Wow, that's
pretty strong. That's
a
pretty strong.
big time
Yeah,
deal, right?
yeah.
I mean, I think there's probably more than 207 brain surgeons in the world, but I'm not comparing or contrasting. I mean, around town, I mean, these are some of the people that you've worked with and the people that you've tasted wine with for years and years, and so they've put in this effort.
It's been an amazing privilege to be part of such a great sommelier community. The guys at Canlis, Nelson and Philip and Kevin, and then to work together. I mean, we're all supporting each other, and we're so proud of recent masters Thomas Price at the Metropolitan Grill and Chris Tangi, who's opening up Aragona. With Spinas. Jason Stratton.
Yep.
Yeah,
I've heard about that.
We've got what's really cool is we have Rob Bigelow back, and he was the vice president of food and beverage at Aria and
in Vegas.
In Vegas, yes,
Right.
he's back at San Michelle now,
Okay.
and it's fantastic to have him because he was really, I think, our 4th Summit Master.
Okay.
Came out Larry Stone, Emily Wines, Darius Allen, but we've got Greg Harrington and Shane Bjornholm, who are both. Greg's the chairman of the Court of Master Sommeliers right now, and Shane Bjornholm is the director of examination. Two amazing guys who
Great
are doing
personalities,
so
too.
many great things for the community. It's just
That's what I hear is community. I hear all this working together and communication, and it's not just about you. You're doing your own thing on the wine, right? You're getting support.
Oh yeah, it can't be solo. Doing it solo, you're just like. You're lonely, first of all, and you don't know if you're right or wrong. You need a group of people who. It's great to have that energy. I mean, you can't play football alone. You need to be a winning team. It's all about people.
You keep challenging and pushing each other.
Yeah.
Well, I want to come back to the service part for a minute because we had kind of a funny story that we were talking about at the break with some glassware.
Right.
But I know that I think we've talked about this on the show before, Michael. The glassware for the wines is very important, right? I mean, if you really have a nice bottle of wine and you really want to show off the great characteristics or whatever of that wine, it needs to go in the right glass. Is that correct?
I fully agree that the proper glassware can accentuate your experience, can elevate your experience. But really, it comes down to the wine. But I want a clean glass. And, if you've been to the George Riedel presentations, he does it with water. And you're like, oh, my goodness. Even with water, the right glassware, the glassware can taste different. So try that at home. Really.
Wait a minute.
Seriously.
Well, if you talk about Riedel stemware, I mean, how many different? Jeez.
I don't know. They're really
right?
Series, Extreme Series, yeah.
So Riedel, you talk about Riedel, and
that's right.
And they're really the kings of
so
the
we use it at the
glassware
restaurant as
business,
well. Yep.
right? And I think most restaurants in town do, and there's some others that are very good as well. But I think Riedel is kind of a special.
Well, if you remember, gosh, probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago when Riedel first kind of, hit the Seattle scene as a common stemware, there was a lot of pushback on it. It's like, why do we want to spend $6 for a stem, and there was a lot of people that were like concerned about breakage and this and that. And now it's like, it's the norm, it's
really,
the
standard.
It is.
Right.
It is.
And so tell us a little bit about that, Christopher. I mean, really, how does that work? How does a different glass work for a Pinot Noir versus a Cabernet? I mean, I know there's some details, and we want to, give us some insights.
So when we think about the shape of a glass, you've got different diameters, and you've got let's think about a circle. You can have an oval, or you can have a circle.
Okay.
And so by sipping on an oval-sized glass, the rim, it puts the fruit, the tannin, the structure, the acid to different areas on your tongue and your palate. So if it's more of a circle rim, you would think that will focus some of those flavors on your palate. And just where it hits. Obviously we've got 5 spots on our tongue and our palate, which salt, sweet, savory, umami, and acid and things. So the glassware does make a difference. It's really about
how you hit those different senses.
Exactly.
And how much oxygen or air actually...
Yes, for the aromas,
right,
for the
exactly.
bouquet.
But if you're drinking a nice bottle of, let's just throw this name out. Let's say you've got a nice bottle of Paulmeyer.
Okay.
Okay. Do you think that
Hey, let's stay in Washington. How about Leonetti?
Okay, if you're drinking a nice bottle of Leonetti, maybe a reserve, a Merlot,
We got
or a
98
cab.
points. I think everything at 100.
Now, would you recommend a red Solo cup at the football game, or maybe one of those stemless Riedel glasses?
Stemless.
Okay, I like that.
Talk to your friend.
Come out some of those stemless plastic Riedel glasses. I think someone's knocked some of those off. So that's the way to go.
Yeah, I like that.
Your picnic glass, right?
Yes, a buddy of mine used to he'd drink it out of the Solo, and I'd say, "You've got this beautiful wine," and I ended up buying him a case of glasses, and it's changed his life, I believe. Right. Thank goodness for that. Yeah, you're listening to In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley and Christopher Chan in the house and Michael, kind of our wine edition today. And so we've talked about sommeliers, we're talking about glassware, we're talking about the local kind of wine scene. Now, and you were telling us you were at the Rainier Club for many, many years.
15 fantastic years at the Rainier Club.
Well, that's a long time you consider that the restaurant business?
Third of my life.
Yeah. Well, how long has Rainier Club been around?
Since 1888.
Yeah, so it's like one of the oldest.
So you were the rookie
before the state was a state.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell us about your job there and how that evolved in your 15 years.
Well, I remember starting there on Thanksgiving Day, 1997, and Thanksgiving is a great day because it's about family and great food and sharing the table. So that was a wonderful first start. But what I learned is that the Rainier Club had a wine committee. In fact, here's a quick story. The president of Rainier Brewing was a Rainier Club member, and he was looking to diversify their portfolio a little bit. And so in 1965, he was approached by some California guy who wanted to start a winery. Turns out that our Rainier Club member had lent this certain guy named Robert Mondavi $20,000 to start a winery. And then
funny how things work out like that.
Went out on a limb there, didn't
Napa owes Seattle some respect. Yeah.
See, I never knew that story.
I did not either.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Dwayne Krager, he was the guy. So we have some connectivity there. And then, of course, California guys came up here to help Washington get their wine industry going. But at the Rainier Club, they had a wine committee, and it was really cool. We were doing wine dinners. When I first got there in 97, we had wine dinners with Rick Small, Woodward Canyon, and Alex Kalitzin at Quilceda Creek, and Gary and Nancy Figgins, of course, with Leonetti, Chris Camarda. We've done so many things, and it's great to be, starting off doing these fantastic things. We even had Oregon come up. We were doing boutique things with Beau Frères and Christum and Bethel Heights. And
all the Pinot Noir guys.
Yeah.
So if you look around town, and I don't know where you find different restaurant websites, you can find there's wine dinners going on all the time.
There are. It's a great way for, a restaurant to pair with a winery and introduce their guests and new guests to the wine as well as to the restaurant.
Yeah.
The other night when we did cake bread, I think half the room had never been to Pearl.
Right. So we put that stuff up on our website at pearlbellevue.com, and we kind of have a series coming up this fall with a couple more great wineries, but I think you can probably find those around town. I know they do some at the Met. I knew they do some at Daniels, and it's a great way to experience some of those things that normally maybe you wouldn't just go out and like you said, alone have a bottle of wine, right?
You can find that information actually on a cool website called localwineevents.com, and so they can pick any city and you can find something going on. There's a host. Every day there's something going on in the region, let alone the country.
Yeah. What'd you say? Wine's the number one beverage in the world?
Well, I think tea is actually the number one beverage in the world, but wine has, I believe, overcome beer in sales and gallons in the United States.
At least in my house it has.
Well, okay, enough of that. In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley, our special wine edition. So, great times at the Rainier Club, and you guys had a great chef there that was there. Bill was there your entire time?
Chef Bill Morris, yeah. Funny thing, me and Bill were on the same ski best back in 1980.
Oh, that's too funny.
And, I sat in the back, though. He sat in the front.
Well, so when you were doing wine pairings with him...
Don't read too much into that, right?
Yeah, right.
But he was a great chef to pair wines with and great guy to work with, and so great experience for you.
For sure. He worked with Thierry and Barbara Figaro. And
He's been around. Yep. I like that. A lot of guys in Seattle area kind of help each other out. That feels good. So we're going to be right back in the Kitchen with Chef Bradley. We're going to talk about the Seattle Wine Awards and the Oregon Wine Awards. Kind of fun. I wonder what it takes to be part of that, Michael. We're going to find out.
That's right.
We'll be right back in the Kitchen with Chef Bradley.
Chef Bradley Dickinson and Michael Rogers invite you to Pearl in Bellevue.
This is a great time of the year. We're transitioning from summer into fall. So is the wine list. We've got a lot of great wineries that are just now releasing their wines. It's harvest time right now. We had a great year. The 2012 vintage is going to be fabulous. But right now, we're starting to see the 2011s. We're starting to see the 2010s starting to be released. Again, really great quality wine coming out of Washington State right now.
PearlBellevue.com in Bellevue's Lincoln Square across the driveway from the Westin Hotel. Pearl in Bellevue.
Welcome back. Bradley's Rock and Roll Kitchen, also known as In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley, and it's our special wine edition today. Christopher Chan is in the house, and we got some interesting things going on wine-wise, and Michael and I just did a great wine dinner this week with cake bread. That was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And I want to come back to the Seattle Wine Awards we mentioned, but a couple things to wrap up. Michael, you're headed to Walla Walla next week, is that right?
Yeah, we leave. My wife and I are leaving on Tuesday morning.
Well, that's kind of an anniversary.
15 years.
So that's and we've talked about this. A great time to go to Walla Walla, right? Because the weather's still decent.
Yep.
And they're picking grapes, I think.
Yeah, they're crushing.
Right?
Yeah,
so that's a lot more fun when you see stuff like that happening, isn't it?
Demystify. Oh.
So, real quick, now where should Michael go? Give us some pointers, Christopher.
Let me tell you a couple for sure stops on my way, okay? So we're driving Tuesday morning after the kids hit the bus, and we're going to stop Red Mountain on the way. And I actually know John Bookwalter, one of his investors, John Surkey, who lives in my neighborhood. Our kids went to school, as did Todd Roush, who used to work with you over at the Rainier Club. So we're going to stop there and probably see John, and then maybe take a quick walk through Colsolare or go see if Tom Hedges is in the neighborhood, So, and then after lunch, just keep going.
Speed on down that road.
That's right.
Who would you say? So you're going to Walla Walla. Who's the new hot? Is there a hot list you've got to go see? Guys that are kind of up and coming.
At the break, we were talking about Charles. I think that's
Charles Smith has done a lot for Washington wine because he's a big producer and he's got the personality to make wine cool for a lot of young people.
Well, and Brennan, who used to be with FSD,
Brennan
is now
Layton.
working with him. Yeah, so he left FSD and
Tattoo Fest.
Yeah, they're over there. So they're over there stomping right now.
Yeah.
Are you going to be part of that?
I'm going to be on the other side of that.
The other side, the finished side,
the finished
so to
side,
speak.
Barrel sample, the thief.
That's right.
So to speak. Okay. Then one other thing I want to talk about before the wine awards is I mentioned the chili. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you about the chili. And by the way, I'll post the recipe on the website at pearlbellevue.com. It'll be on the blog. In fact, I think we're talking about that tomorrow or later this week too. But anyway, so my chili, Christopher, it's not just about hot. Some guys it's got to be super. For me, the chili is about a depth of flavors, right? It's about, yes, you get some spice on the tongue, but it also kind of warms you throughout. So it's
especially the way the football weather's been the last few weekends.
Well, sometimes that's the way it works out. But I mean, for me, I onions and garlic, and I start with some peppers and so forth. But I use
sweetness going. And then,
but I use some. I don't use ground beef or pork. I use chunks of beef and pork, and I kind of like the little, just kind of the way that simmers and stews up. And of course, beef stock and tomatoes, and I throw a couple of extra things in there that I put a beer in there.
Right.
I put a dark beer and I put a half a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. But by the way, it still has to simmer for 8 hours, so it's not like you're not going to get you're not tasting the barley malt, and it doesn't taste like a double shot of espresso.
Everything comes together.
But everything kind of comes and adds to the richness and again the depth of flavors. So now, if you have a vision of what that chili is, what's the perfect beverage? Now, I might say it's an ice cold, malt liquor,
Right.
Malt liquor.
Probably not a malt liquor. But I don't know. You guys are the beverage guys. I need help here.
Well, the tailgate with the big can, is that what you're talking about?
Correct that 40.
What do we do? Is there wine that works with this? I'm guessing
Michael, there's lots of wines that work with it. Don't
you
agree? Yeah.
I would think so. I'm kind of a Syrah, Cab Franc, maybe kind of a thing. Maybe.
You can go Syrah from Washington. You go Cab Franc from Washington.
Now, why does that work? So I understand. Why does the Syrah work? Why would the Syrah work with a spicy kind of a chili?
Well, like Christopher was saying earlier, you get the spice and the spice working together hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, could I do a contrast?
contrast? Well, I think with chili, you're really looking for a comparison here because you've got a lot of flavors, and you want to sort of have a wine that accompanies those flavors. I'm thinking Zinfandel is a good one. Yep. Something from the Rhone like Mourvedre or just the Grenache Syrah, a blend.
Like those GSM.
GSM. Exactly.
Okay, so look for me next week.
Right.
Under the big tree at the tailgate, and I'll probably have a bottle of Washington Syrah.
There you go. Maybe a Long Shadow sequel, huh?
Maybe you can bring me, Michael. You can bring me one from Walla Walla.
Okay. There
you go. We'll talk about that on the air right before the tailgate, and it'll be perfect.
Okay. I just saw John Duvall last week.
Oh,
actually.
did you?
He was down there in Australia.
Very fun.
Wow. Okay, so now what I've been waiting for, I want to talk about the Seattle Wine Awards. I mean, and you're the founder and the executive director, and this is a big deal.
It's a pretty big deal now. It's an honor and privilege to have thought of something that the industry has embraced so heartily. 2006, an idea. I saw the wine industry here in Washington was booming. And I said, you know what? We're making some great wine. Let's bring in my sommelier friends and the people who all these wineries come to sell to and value their opinion, and let's just do a blind tasting. And in 2006, we had 276 wines, and 8 years later, 2013, we just tasted 1,105.
Wait a minute.
Wow.
You tasted 1,105 wines?
Yeah, we've got. So I pull a panel.
How long does this take?
It takes. It's work.
And do you have an Uber account to get home?
Well, remember we taste. So tasting is spitting. And when you go wine tasting, as a reminder, try to spit. I mean, drink the really good stuff, but save your palate.
Okay.
So during this, the Seattle Wine Awards, I bring in a panel of 15, and I split them up to 3 teams of 5. And so each team will taste a variety of wines, what I call a matrix. They'll taste about 75 to 80 wines before lunch, and then 75, 80, 90 wines after lunch. So you have a break, but if you got 3 hours before lunch, 3 hours after lunch, we're talking about 30 wines, 2 minutes of wine by tasting and evaluation. I mean, it's thoughtful.
But you've got to keep moving along.
Yeah. So,
you can't sit around and go, well, I'm not sure. Right? You've got to keep this thing going.
Yeah, but so we hosted at the Rainier Club for many years, and it's very comfortable there on a Saturday and Sunday, so there wasn't any urgency to get up. But we would pre-pour the wines about 20, 30 minutes in advance, let them open up. And so the members of the tasting panel could move at their own pace, which is great. So you're not waiting, so you've got some time to reflect. And the best thing about what I believe is I put this palate cleansing station together. And that's where you can get up, clear your head. I've got Cheetos and cheese and jerky.
All that stuff that just takes it all off the palate.
So I'm sort of like, let's scrape this tannin off.
That sounds very interesting. I kind of like the Cheetos and jerky part.
Right.
Yeah. What wine goes best with that? Well, anyway, so I mean, what are the goals? What are you trying to accomplish with the Seattle Wine Awards? Or you want to rate all these wines?
Yeah, well, it's about a wine recognition program. It's not a competition. I've always said that. It's about
recognition.
Yeah, recognizing some great Washington wines. And so we tasted the wine single blind. So the panel, I believe, needs to know that it's Cabernet. If it tastes like a great Pinot Noir and it's a Merlot, what does that do? It doesn't help anybody, in my opinion. So,
it's going to be varietal correct.
Yeah, it's single blind. So they know. They don't know producer nor price point.
Hold on. We talked about culinary terms. That's a wine term. Single blind as opposed to a...
Double blind, meaning I just hand you a glass of wine, you got to figure it out.
Okay.
If I tell you this is a Cabernet, then you go, oh, Cabernet from where? Chile.
Right. And then you
Napa.
can go to work.
Yeah,
but the people on your panel could probably handle it.
Well, sure. Yeah, but they know it's all Washington wine, so they kind of they know that for one. So I guess you could say it's almost single blind. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So basically we are tasting and evaluating wine, recognizing wines in 3 retail categories. So this is very helpful for the consumer, $20 and below, $35 to $20, and $35 and above. So we've got 3 different price points that people can look, hey, what's my budget, and where's that gold medal or double gold medal, or I want to try this wine. And
well, that's a great. I love that.
Yeah, it's cool.
So where does somebody go to and find the results?
SeattleWineAwards.com. You can look at all
That's
the
a plug.
gold, all the award winners there, and see what works in your budget.
Wow, that's a great deal. So you do this every year, and you've done it since 2006.
Yes.
When's the next one coming up?
Next April. So we evaluate in April, then we host a big party, which I'll call it a party, a celebration of the recognition. We connect the consumers to the wineries. That'll be June 8th.
Okay.
It's called the Gold Medal Wine Experience. And
save the date.
Save the date now.
June 8th, and that's 2014, folks.
2014.
Well, but you're also you're doing this in Oregon as well.
I am, and there's so much confidence in this protocol, this methodology, that I took it down to Oregon, and the Oregon wine industry has embraced it as equally to taste Pinots and everyone actually thinks Oregon about Pinot Noir. They go, okay, but there's really a couple regions. I mean, Walla Walla Valley is in Oregon,
Right.
Columbia Gorge and Columbia Valley. Also, there's a southern Oregon appellation called the Rogue Valley. And Umpqua, where it's quite warm, so they get some big wine. So Oregon doesn't only make great Pinot Noir, they make great Syrah, and they've got some Cabs and Tempranillo, et cetera. So don't overlook that.
So now, as a consumer, you can go to Washington or Oregon wines. And I mean, I'm getting 1,100 wines, and I don't know how many wines are produced in Washington, but
5,000,
I'm guessing,
6,000.
So not everybody gets their wines in front of you.
No, they haven't yet, but it's grown. I mean, this evaluation process has grown every year, and I don't see an end to it, which is daunting.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, you're going to have to make this a week-long event.
I could see 3 days down the road.
How do you? Michael might have some interest in getting on the panel.
There you go.
I think you have to study up a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
I would have to study up a lot.
I mean, I'm looking at this panel. This is a who's who
Strong.
in the wine business, right?
It is, and we want the panel to be recognized not only by the wine industry, but also by the consumer. We want the consumer to go, oh my goodness, Tommy Thompson from Tulalip's on there, or
and they've got an amazing wine list now, right up there.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. They got a great event coming up. If you guys are going to the Taste Tulalip, you been there yet?
Oh, I've not been there yet, but it's what I've heard is just
Over
out of
the
this world.
top.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I thought I put on a great event. I'm in love with Tulalip.
Those
Okay.
guys are big time. I've seen them at a couple of. I saw them at Chef's Night Out in Tulalip. Just come.
Right.
They bring their truck in. They bring in their team of chefs, and they just go crazy.
Yeah.
And great for their marketing department. But it's over the top.
It is over the top. Get a room.
Get a room.
You don't want to spit there. It's so
When is
good.
that? When is that? Is that coming up?
It's November 8th and 9th, I believe.
Okay.
It's 2 days.
Take a look at that. That's probably on their website. So SeattleWineAwards.com.
Yep, and OregonWineAwards.com. Find your award-winning wines right here locally and on the website.
And
Support
decide
the local
what,
guys, yeah.
and decide what fits your budget and what are you looking for. So how does it broken down online? Is it varietals or price points and
both.
Okay.
So you can find your
Mix and
favorite
match?
Chardonnay, your Sauvignon Blanc, or your proprietary blend, Rhone style, Syrah, etc. Just check it out. It's really pretty simple.
So when I need that Syrah for my chili,
You probably get a couple of recommendations.
I know
right there.
I know exactly where to go.
We're
So
making a lot of good Syrah now, so you won't have any challenge.
Well, that's just amazing, and I'm glad that you were able to come on today and talk to us and kind of share some of these sommelier tips, if you will, and we wish you the best of luck with your studies in the future and everything that you've got going on. Keep us posted on what's going on. I know you're at the Rainier Club for a long time, and what's next for you? We've got 30 seconds. Give us a quickie.
Doing some wine education classes down at Esquin, helping them with their Sky Lounge.
they've got a good
Working on
program,
that,
yeah.
and then working on a national sommelier conference for June called SOM Summit. So if you want to learn
Wow.
about Washington, Oregon wine, I'll keep you posted. Great to be on here with you guys.
Well, that's
Yeah.
great. Christopher Chan, thank you again for joining Michael and myself in the kitchen with Chef Bradley, and we'll be back next week. I don't know that we're going to talk about wine. We'll probably end up there at some point. Have a great time, Walla Walla. Michael, and we'll see you next Saturday. Have a great day. Thank you.
In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley Dickinson. In the Kitchen with Chef Bradley Dickinson. Every Saturday morning at 11 on Talk Radio 570 KBI. KBI.